Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Studio Albums Ranked. Today we're going to be looking at the studio albums of Paul McCartney, legendary singer-songwriter, obviously previously of the Beatles, went on to form Wings. I'm going to be looking at his whole solo, like post-Beatles catalogue, so I'm going to be looking at solo albums plus Wings albums. I'm not going to be going through all of them because there are 26 of them, so what I've done is I've picked my top 10, and I think they're all wonderful albums, really good, and the top 10 that I've picked come throughout his whole career. So let's go and get straight into it, and with my number 10, it's the only one I don't have on vinyl, unfortunately, for these top 10. And that is his album from 2005, and that is Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. This is a really good album. Produced by Nigel Godrich. Paul wrote some really good songs for this album. Things like Jenny Wren and English Tea and Too Much Rain. This Never Happens Before, Friends to Go. It's a really good album. He plays most but not all of the instruments himself on this album. That's a really old photo, I think was taken by his brother Mike McGear. I really enjoy that album. Speaking of latter day Paul McCartney albums, my number 9 is his second to last album so far. From 2018, Egypt Station. I was really pleasantly surprised when this album came out because it's really good. It doesn't break any new ground for Paul McCartney, but he's well into his 70s, or well, I think he may have turned 80 by now. He was 77 or 78 when this album came out. But his songwriting is still really good, and although his voice is starting to sound a little bit frail, he still can sing really well. I Don't Know is such a good song. After the sort of like opening station is like this little montage-y, instrumental-y kind of thing. Then you get into I Don't Know, and I think it's a wonderful song. And then Come On To Me, Happy With You is really good. For You. That title was always strange to me, but I like the song a lot. People Want Peace, Hand in Hand. It's a double album on vinyl, and he doesn't waste any of it. Hunt You Down, Naked, Sea Length, the sort of little suite at the end is really, really good too, and Despite Repeated Warnings I like. It's a wonderful album. It sort of harkens back to some of his sort of 70s kind of sound, or even some sort of 60s kind of things going on with it. A bit Pet Soundsy in some ways. Although it doesn't have the orchestrations and stuff that something like that does. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's musically as colourful as that cover is. Which Paul McCartney painted himself, by the way. Coming in at number 8, I'm going to go with a Wings album from 1975, and that is Venus and Mars. I know some people will have this one a bit higher, but I do have some of my higher ones are ones that maybe don't get talked about as much. I think a lot of his 70s catalogue with Wings and what have you gets talked about a lot, and I certainly will be talking about quite a number of the 70s albums. But as you can see, I'll be talking about albums throughout his whole catalogue. But this is a really good album. I mean, it starts off with Venus and Mars going into Rock Show. Crushed that live when he used to do it. Wings Across America, the live triple album. Such a good album. I mean, I don't do live albums in these, I only do studio albums, but that is an absolutely crushingly good live album. Love in Song is a lovely little ballad. You Gave Me the Answer is sort of fun, vaudeville kind of song. Magneto and Titanium Man, you're getting into sort of the realm of the X-Men and comic books. Letting Go, big single off this, wonderful song. You get the Venus and Mars reprise at the beginning of side 2, then you get Spirits of Ancient Egypt, sung by Denny Lane, which I always really like. Medicine Jar, sung by Jimmy McCulloch, which I think of the 2 Jimmy McCulloch songs in the Wings catalogue, that one's my favourite. I think it's a great one. Again, they used to do a really good version of it live. Call Me Back Again is good. Listen to What the Man Said was the huge hit single. And then you get the Treat Her Gently, Lonely Old People, and going into the Crossroads theme. So I really like that album. But some of these other albums I think are a little bit better, including my number 7 pick from 1997, and that is Flaming Pie. This was considered a bit of a comeback album for him. This was the album that he did after he did the Beatles anthology, getting back together with George and Ringo to do that huge documentary. And he wanted to get a bit of that sort of Beatles sound back into his songwriting, I think. He worked with, at least on some of the songs, he worked with Jeff Lynne, who had also done the production work for the 2 new Beatles songs that are in the anthology. But there's just really good songwriting on this album. The Song We Were Singing is a beautiful opening song. The World Tonight's really good. I love it. Good rocker. If you wanna, Young Boy. When that single came out, I thought, oh yeah, Macca's back. Love that song. It's such a really good song. Working with Steve Miller on a couple of these songs. That one and Used to Be Bad. Used to Be Bad's more of a sort of a pretty standard sort of bluesy song, but I like it. Flaming Pie is great. Heaven on a Sunday. Little Willow is so beautiful. Song for the late departed Maureen Starkey, who was Ringo's first wife. Beautiful Night I really like, and Great Day to End. Wonderful album. My number 6 I think is probably just about the underrated gem of the McCartney catalogue. It's the Wings album from 1979, and that is Back to the Egg. I love this album, and I always have from the moment I first heard it. This album didn't sell very well. It was the last Wings album before they broke up after the big drug bust in 1980 in Japan. But I think this is a really good album. It's a very rocking album, a lot of it. Getting Closer. I mean, you get the reception sort of, again, one of those sort of montagey things that Paul likes to start some of his albums with. And then you get the first sort of proper song, which is Getting Closer. Great rock and roll song. We're Open Tonight, I really like. That's sort of a more quiet song. Then you get into Spin It On. Again, really rocking. I think this was sort of Paul's answer to the new wave movement in a lot of ways. And my first love was new wave music, so this album was always going to appeal to me. Again and Again and Again, a song sung by Denny Lane, which I really like. Old Siam Sir, that should have been a hit single. I don't care what other people say, I love that song. Arrow Through Me, beautiful song. Really lovely. Then on side 2 you get the rockestra theme, or the sides are actually called Sunny Side Up and Over Easy to fit in with the Back to the Egg theme. You get the rockestra theme, To You, and then you get a couple of these sort of blended together songs again that Paul liked to do, going all the way back to the sort of medley on Abbey Road. You get After the Ball and Million Miles, and then you get Winter Rose and Love Awake. Really like those. Then you get the Broadcast, which again is one of these sort of sound effecty pieces. Then you get So Glad to See You Here, which is the big rockestra song where you've got all these massive names, guest artists playing on it. And then you get the beautiful Baby's Request to end the album. This is a really underrated album, and I think more and more people should know this album in the Paul McCartney catalogue. Okay, so we're getting into my top 5 now. And my number 5 album is going to be his album from 1989, and that is Flowers in the Dirt. Again, considered a bit of a comeback album after a couple of albums that didn't get such a good reception. He made the film that he made, what was it called? Give My Regards to Broad Street, which bombed. And the soundtrack album that he did for it is one of his weaker albums, even though it's got one of my favourite songs of his on it, which is No More Lonely Nights. That's a beautiful song, wonderful Dave Gilmour guitar soloing on it. But the rest of the album, not so good. But this, and then there was Press to Play, which I think is a better album than people think, and I will probably do a In Defense of on one of these days on Press to Play. I think it's actually a pretty good album. But then he came with this, Flowers in the Dirt, and it's a wonderful album. I mean, some of the songs he worked with Trevor Horn as a co-producer. Some of the songs, famously, he co-wrote with Elvis Costello, and they are wonderful songs. Again, when My Brave Face came out as a single, I had the same feeling as I did with Young Boy when that came out as a single, which was, Macca's back. Such a good song. That's one of the ones he co-wrote with Elvis Costello. Rough Ride is really good. You Want Her Too is a duet with Elvis Costello, and I really, really like that. Distractions. What a beautiful song. Really moody, and it's a beautiful lyric about, you know, the distractions that lead us away from our loved one. And the flutes and a beautiful Paul McCartney vocal on it. We Got Married is a great song. You've got some guitar from Dave Gilmour on that one again. Put It There is a beautiful way to end side one. And then you get Figure of Eight, really good song. This one I really like. Again, got that bit of a 60s feel to it, which I really like. Don't Be Careless Love might be the weakest song on the album, but I still like it. That Day Is Done is really good. How Many People is a wonderful song. It's one of Paul's sort of more political songs. And then the beautiful Motor of Love to end the album. Great album. For my number 4 album, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of his career. 1970s McCartney. The album that broke up the Beatles in some ways, because it was the press release that he put out for this album that basically announced that the Beatles were no more. And as a result of that, this album got pretty heavily panned by the critics at the time, and unfairly so as far as I'm concerned. This is probably one of the first lo-fi albums. He recorded it all himself with a 4-track tape recorder. It's just him and with Linda doing some harmony vocals. Some of them are just little snippets of songs, others are fully formed songs, but I really love the juxtaposition of everything. I love the offhanded nature of it, and there are some absolutely cracking songs on this. I mean, it starts off with The Lovely Linda, which is just a delightful little snippet. And then That Would Be Something is really good. I really, really like that. Valentine Day is a really nice instrumental. Really like that. Every Night. What a beautiful song. Really underrated and overlooked song in his catalogue. I remember when he redid that for the Unplugged session that he did, the MTV Unplugged. It was late 80s, early 90s, I can't quite remember. But it's a wonderful song. It could have been a Beatles song, absolutely. Then you've got some of the sort of snippets, Hot as Sun and Glasses, and then Junk was a song that he actually did record with the Beatles during the Get Back sessions. Man, We Was Lonely. I really like that. Ooh You is wonderful. It's a really fun song. One that he seems to have just made up on the spot. But so much fun. Really love it. Mama Miss America, another instrumental. Teddy Boy is another song that he did originally do with the Beatles, and I really like that song. would have been a good one. Sing Along Junk is an instrumental version of Junk. Then you've got the hit single off this, although it wasn't even released as a single in a lot of places, which is Maybe I'm Amazed. A song that he still does to this day, and for good reason. It's one of the greatest songs he ever wrote. And then you get the sort of really strange instrumental at the end, Creen Acor. And I've heard a lot of people say bad things about that, but I think it's a lot of fun. I like it. It's a strange album. It's such an odd, sort of underproduced album coming off what the Beatles did, especially Abbey Road. I don't know if Let It Be had just come out or was just about to come out at the time this was out, but the last Beatles thing that most people would have known was Abbey Road, which is so lushly produced. And to have this sort of really raw production on this album was a huge statement from Paul, I think. Just to suggest that he was taking it down a notch and going with something different. And I think it's a great album. My number 3 is going to be a lot of people's number 1, I think. It's a Wings album from 1973, and that is Band on the Run. I mean, what can be said about this album that hasn't already been said? It was a huge hit for him. It was sort of the first album that he'd done after the Beatles that actually got some good critical feedback. The first 3 or 4 albums that he did after the Beatles got savaged by the critics. Unfairly for the most part, I think. We'll get onto one of those albums a little later on. But even an album like Wildlife is another album I could definitely do an In Defense Of album show about, because although it didn't make my top 10, I think it's a much better album than people give it credit for. Red Rose Speedway is a bit patchy, but there is still some good stuff on that album. But this was the first album that really sort of the critics said, yeah, this is a good Paul McCartney album. Maybe they'd started to forgive him over the breakup of the Beatles, I don't know. But I mean, it's just classic after classic on this album. You've got the title track, Band on the Run. You've got Jat, huge hit. Bluebird, beautiful, gorgeous song. Mrs. Vanderbilt, not on all... yes, that one is on all copies. I'm thinking of Helen Wheels, which isn't on all copies. Mrs. Vanderbilt's a really great rock song. I really love it. Let Me Roll It. Beautiful song. Kind of aping the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band sound, but in a loving way. It's got that sort of drenched reverb on the vocal, and it's just really good. Love it. Then side 2 opens with Mamounia, which is really lovely. No Words for My Love. Beautiful song. Helen Wheels, as I say, not on every version of this album, but I do like having it in the list on this album. I think it works well in the concept of this album, but in the UK it was a non-album single. Picasso's Last Words, a song that he apparently wrote in front of Dustin Hoffman, I think it was. I could be wrong. Tell me in the comments if I've gotten that story wrong. And then 1985, great crushing rock song to end with. And then at the very end of that, you get like this little tiny reprise of Band on the Run. It's a classic album for a reason. It's just these top 2 that I like a little bit better. But this is an absolutely brilliant album. There's a reason that sold a ton of copies. My number 2 album, though, is going to be his solo album from 1982, and that is Tug of War. I got this album when it first came out, and I have been absolutely in love with this album, with the exception of one song, ever since. The title track opens the album. Such a good song. Again, one of his sort of political songs, you know, sort of crying for peace. Take It Away. Lush, gorgeous song. This was his reunion with George Martin too, and that's like really important. George Martin does such a beautiful job of producing this album. But Take It Away is great. Somebody Who Cares is a beautiful song, and it's got some absolutely gorgeous acoustic guitar from Paul McCartney in the solo. What's That You're Doing is the first of two collaborations with Stevie Wonder, and it's the great collaboration on this album. It's dirty, it's funky, it's just great, and it's Paul and Stevie doing pretty much all the instruments. Then side one closes with the absolutely heartbreaking Here Today, which is his tribute to John Lennon, who'd passed sort of less than 2 years before this album came out, had been murdered, and Paul sings this absolutely gorgeous song to him, to his dear departed brother. And I tear up to this day. It's 40 years since this album came out, and I still tear up listening to Here Today, about listening to the emotion in Paul's voice as he sings these words to his beloved brother John. It's an absolutely great song. Then you get on to side two, Ballroom Dancing. I love that song. It's so much fun. Really good. The Pound Is Sinking is one of those songs where the lyric is kind of strange, talking about currencies and things like that, but musically it's so engaging and involving. Really love it. Wanderlust. So lush. So, the orchestrations that George Martin does for this song are just so beautiful. Just beautiful song. I've always loved that song. Get It. A beautiful little song that's a duet with Carl Perkins, the legendary 50s rock and roller Carl Perkins. And it's a really lovely song, a lot of fun. You get a little linking piece called Be What You See, which is just sort of Paul's vocals with some keyboards and through a vocoder. Then you get the wonderful rocking, almost disco-y Dress Me Up as a Robber, which I really, really like. And then it closes out with the one song that I'm not a huge fan of, which is Ebony and Ivory. I appreciate the sentiment of the song being an anti-racism song and all that sort of thing, and it's another collaboration with Stevie Wonder. It just comes across a little cheesy, but it doesn't take away from me for the enjoyment of this whole album, which I think, as I say, it's my number 2 ever. It's my second favourite Paul McCartney album. Cracking album. But my number 1 is going to be the album he did with Linda in 1971, and that is Ram. This is such a good album. And again, this got pilloried when it came out. Coming out after McCartney, he went for a bigger production value. It's not so, it was recorded in proper studios rather than in his, excuse me, little home studio. But the critics didn't care. They thought that Paul wasn't writing songs of the quality of the Beatles. I disagree. I don't think these are Beatle-esque songs, but I think he's trying to do something a bit different, and I think it works well. Too Many People. Wonderful song, even if John thought he was pointing the finger at him. It's a really good song, and you don't often hear Paul getting a bit angry, but he does sound a little bit angry in this song. Three Legs. Really good song. Ram On, I love, is a beautiful... Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. Ram On is a really good song. Musically, he hits some really strange notes, but they're haunting and lovely. Dear Boy is another one of those songs that John thought was pointing fingers at him, but I really, really like it. Then you get the big, massive number 1 hit single in the US, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey. It's one of those songs, again, that's kind of a medley song within one song. And it's whimsical, and I really like it. And then you get the Rockin' Smile Away to end side one. Great way to end the side. Then you start with the lovely sort of folky Heart of the Country on side two, Monkberry Moon Delight. Lots of fun. Again, sort of nonsense lyrics that Paul liked to write sometimes, but I really like them. You get the Rockin' Eat at Home, which is really great. I should say, Linda's backing vocals and sometimes lead vocals on this album are really good. They've got a naivety to them, that's true. But I think it's charming, and I think I really liked her as a singer. But I know a lot of people ridiculed her at the time, and again, unfairly so, I think. I enjoy her contributions to this album. Long Haired Lady is a beautiful ballad. Then you get the sort of instrumental reprise of Ram On, and then you end with possibly the classic of this song. Again, a very sort of Pet Sounds era Beach Boys kind of song, Backseat of My Car. Wonderful. Really good song. So that's my top 10 Paul McCartney albums, going through them again from number 1 to number 10. At number 1 we have Ram by Paul and Linda. At number 2 we have Tug of War. At number 3, Band on the Run. Number 4, McCartney, the self-titled. At number 5 we have Flowers in the Dirt. At number 6, Wings, Back to the Egg. At number 7, Flaming Pie. At number 8, Venus and Mars. Number 9, Egypt Station from 2018. Still cranking out great albums, Paul McCartney. And then at number 10 from 2005, we have Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. So that's my Paul McCartney top 10 studio albums ranked. I'd love to know in the comments what your favourite Paul McCartney albums are. If you want to do a top 10, please drop a comment and let me know. If you want to rank all 26 of them, if you want to be braver than I was, I'd love to see that list too. Tell me which ones of these you love, which ones of these maybe you don't think I should have had in my top 10, maybe other ones you think were more deserving. Would love to hear that in the comments. I really love reading the comments, so please leave me as many comments as you like. I try to read them all and respond where I can. Please like, share and subscribe. It really, really does help the channel out. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far. It means so much to me, and it really does help the channel out. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, I'm mostly posting the records I happen to be listening to at the time, as well as channel updates. On Twitter, I talk about everything and anything. But I am trying to give that more of a music and a channel focus. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have playlists for everything, so if you want to look at my other studio albums ranked shows, there's a playlist for that. If you want to look at my In Defense Of shows that I've mentioned a couple of times in this episode, there's a playlist for those. My favourite albums of all time playlist, reviews, anniversary albums, etc. All the shows have a playlist that you can go and browse and watch whatever you want and find things easily on the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.